Welcome to the world of science fiction Neon's Alien. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story from Neon's Alien universe. The Galactic Academy was the most famous place in the universe. Aliens from hundreds of planets came here to learn, train, and become leaders. It was a place full of rules, order, and respect. But there was one student who broke all the rules, without ever saying a word. Her name was Cerexa. She was tall, elegant, and came from a cold, distant world called Vetrax. Her skin shimmered like ice, and her eyes glowed silver in the dark. But what made her truly dangerous was not her beauty, it was her pet. No one knew exactly what the creature was. It looked like a giant black serpent with glowing red eyes and long, sharp fangs. Its name was Zathkai, and it never left her side. It coiled around her shoulders, moved like liquid shadow, and hissed softly whenever someone got too close. Many students had tried to talk to Cerexa. Many had tried to befriend her. But Zathkai always attacked. One student got bitten and spent 3 days in the healing chamber. After that, no one dared to approach her again. "Stay away from her," they whispered. "She's untouchable, and that thing, it's not just a pet, it's a monster." Cerexa never smiled. She never spoke unless necessary. Her voice was cold and smooth like glass. She only cared about her classes, her training, and Zathkai. But then a human arrived. His name was Mark Danner. He was older than most students, tall and lean, with short black hair and curious brown eyes. He came from Earth, a world most aliens considered weak or emotional. But Mark had a different energy. He didn't walk with fear. He didn't act proud either. He was calm. On his first day, the Academy assigned him a mission partner. To everyone's shock, it was Cerexa. Whispers spread like fire through the Academy halls. "They put a human with her? He's going to die. Zathkai will eat him alive." Mark didn't react to the gossip. He only smiled slightly and went to find his new partner. He found her in the training yard, standing alone near the edge. Zathkai was curled around her arm, flicking its tongue at the wind. Mark walked toward her slowly. Students nearby stopped moving. Some even hid behind pillars, waiting to see blood. As he stepped closer, the beast raised its head. Its red eyes locked on him. It hissed, loud and sharp. The wind seemed to freeze. Mark didn't stop. Zathkai uncoiled like a whip. It launched forward, fangs open wide, aiming straight for his neck. Someone screamed, but Mark didn't move. Just as the beast reached him, he whispered something. No one could hear the words. Zathkai stopped midair. Its eyes widened. Its body froze. Then, slowly, it dropped to the ground. It slithered back and coiled again at Cerexa's feet, silent and calm. The silence in the yard was heavy. No one spoke. Cerexa's eyes narrowed. She looked at Mark like she was seeing something impossible. Mark stood in front of her, only a few steps away. He didn't flinch. He didn't smile either. He just looked at her and said in a calm voice, "I believe we're partners now." She didn't reply, but Zathkai didn't attack again. Word spread across the Academy like lightning. The human didn't flinch. The pet listened to him. He whispered something, and it worked. That night, students gathered in, secret groups talking about what had happened. Some were scared, some were curious, and some were angry. Humans were not supposed to have such power. In her room, Cerexa sat silently, watching Zathkai. The beast was resting peacefully, but something had changed. It seemed calm, even loyal to him. "What did he say?" she whispered, more to herself than to the pet. Zathkai only flicked its tongue once and closed its eyes. Far across the Academy, Mark sat alone in his quarters. He looked out the window into the stars, thoughtful. He knew what he had done. He had spoken the ancient tongue of Vetrax, a language no one used anymore, not even Cerexa. But Mark had learned it long ago, in a place no one remembered, a secret place on a jungle moon. And now, Zathkai was listening. Mark closed his eyes and whispered again, this time into the quiet air. Things are about to change. Zathakai had never stopped for anyone. Not for Sirexa's instructors, not for her enemies, not even for high-ranking counselors. But when the human whispered, the beast froze, like time itself had paused. Students stood in silence around the training yard, their mouths open, their eyes wide. No one knew what they had just witnessed. Zathakai slowly slithered back, lowering its massive head to the ground as if showing respect. It coiled beside Sirexa and stayed still, calm, obedient. For the first time in years, Sirexa didn't speak, but her heart beat faster. She could feel it. This wasn't normal. This wasn't possible. No one outside her species even understood the old tongue. That language was lost centuries ago, buried under Vatraxian snow. And yet, this human had used it. Mark didn't act surprised. He simply stood there, his eyes steady, his body relaxed. He didn't flinch. He didn't boast. He just nodded politely and waited. "I don't need protection," Sirexa said coldly, breaking the silence. "I didn't offer any," Mark replied calmly. "I came to meet my partner." Sirexa blinked. Few people ever dared speak to her like that. Even fewer lived to finish their sentence. She turned and walked away without another word, but her mind was racing. Who was this human? How did he know that language? And why did Zathakai obey him without hesitation? That night, in the shadows of the Academy dome, a secret meeting took place. Several alien students from proud warrior races gathered in an old observatory room. Their eyes glowed in the dark and their voices were sharp with envy and fear. "No one controls that beast," said a tall, red-skinned cadet. "She barely controls it herself." "But he did," another replied. And, with just a whisper, "He must be hiding something. He's dangerous. We need to know more about him and before it's too late." Meanwhile, Mark sat alone under a tree near the Academy's outer wall. He stared at the stars, speaking quietly to himself. He wasn't just a soldier. He wasn't just a student. He was something else. Something the Academy wasn't ready for yet. Behind him, a quiet slither moved through the grass. Zathakai, the serpent, had left Sirexa's room and followed the human silently. It didn't hiss, it didn't strike. It simply rested its massive head beside Mark like a loyal animal sitting beside its true master. Mark looked down at the creature. "You remember, don't you?" he said softly. Zathakai blinked once, a slow, deep movement of understanding. "You heard those words before, long ago on the jungle moon of Vatrax 3. That's where I learned them, from a dying elder who once tamed your kind." The serpent gave no sound, but it didn't leave. At the same time, Sirexa woke from a strange dream. In it, she stood alone in a field of stars, and Zathakai was gone, lost, stolen. She sat up in bed, breath heavy, only to find the beast's place beside her empty. Her heart jumped. No. She rushed to the door and scanned the halls with her eyes. Her pet was gone, for the first time since childhood, and her mind spoke the truth she didn't want to hear. It went to him, rage, fear, shame, all mixed in her chest like a storm. She clenched her fists. Mark had whispered one word, and now everything was starting to change. She stormed out of her quarters and began following the faint trail left by the serpent. Her long cloak dragged across the glowing floors of the Academy. Her eyes were sharp with fury, but somewhere deep inside, curiosity burned hotter. "Who are you, Mark Danner? And what did you take from me?" Without even trying. The Academy never slept, but that night something felt different. The walls whispered rumors. The stars above blinked nervously, and Sirexa, she didn't return to her room. Instead, she followed the invisible thread pulling her toward the edge of the Academy grounds. She didn't understand it, only that Zathakai had chosen to sleep beside a human, not her. That choice cut deeper than any blade. She found them beneath the twin light trees, their silver leaves swaying gently. Mark sat quietly. Zathakai rested beside him, peaceful, loyal. It was a betrayal. You have no right, Sorexa said sharply. Mark didn't turn around. To what? To speak to it, to control it, to take it. I didn't take anything, he said. It came on its own. Her fingers twitched with fury. You don't know what you're doing. That creature was born to protect me. It's bound to me by ancient rights. Mark finally looked at her. Then why did it leave you? The silence that followed felt colder than space itself. Sorexa's voice dropped. You've started something you don't understand. Mark stood up slowly. Then help me understand. She blinked. That wasn't the answer she expected. Not anger, not fear. Just honesty, and something about it unsettled her more than anything else. Later that same cycle, Sorexa sat alone in the library archive. She pulled up ancient Vetraxian records, scrolls no student dared read. Mark's whisper haunted her. It wasn't just a word. It was a binding phrase spoken in a language even her elders feared. How had a human learned that? Suddenly her console beeped. A message blinked across the screen. Mission invite Sector 9, Deep Cavern Diplomacy Exercise. Pairing, Human Cadet Mark Danner, Vetraxian Cadet Sorexa. Departure, sunrise. No replacements allowed. Her jaw tightened. They were being sent into the deep caverns, a place no one entered without scars. It was a test usually reserved for final year warriors, a place filled with darkness, creatures, and silence so deep it made minds break. Why would they send us there? She whispered. Then she noticed the attached note, not from the academy, but from the High Council itself. Let us see how long the human survives. If he whispers again, the dark will listen. Sorexa stood frozen. This wasn't a mission. This was a trap dressed as a test. As the sun rose, golden light touched the metal spires of the academy. At the transport bay, Mark stood ready with his pack. Zathkai curled around his neck like a scarf of living shadows. Sorexa arrived late, her eyes sharp, her steps quiet. We're being watched, she said. Mark nodded. Always are. This isn't a test. It's a message. Mark smiled slightly. Then let's answer it. The transport ship took off, carrying them toward Sector 9. Below them, the planet's surface faded away, and the black mouths of the deep caverns yawned open, waiting to swallow them whole. Zathkai slithered tighter around Mark's arm, sensing what lay ahead. Sorexa watched quietly, her mind torn. She was supposed to hate this human. Yet her life might soon depend on him. Inside the ship, silence hung like a veil. Then Sorexa broke it. That phrase you used, no one alive should know it. Mark looked at her. I learned it from someone who didn't live long. Where? On a moon your people forgot. A place called Vetrax 3. A dying elder passed it to me, as his final words. Her breath caught. Vetrax 3 was a forbidden name, a cursed land. Her own people erased it from history, and now the whisper of that ancient moon had returned in the voice of a human. As the ship landed at the edge of the caverns, wind howled through the entrance like a scream from deep within. Mark and Sorexa stepped off together. Ahead of them, nothing but pitch blackness. Behind them, the eyes of the galaxy watched, and beside them, a venomous beast coiled in silence, ready to choose sides once again. The deep caverns were not just dark, they were alive. Every breath echoed. Every footstep woke things that slept beneath stone. Ancient creatures crawled through cracks too small to see. And the walls? They whispered back. Mark led the way, torchlight flickering in his hand. Sorexa followed, quiet but alert. Zathkai slithered ahead, silent, sensing the path like it had walked it before. The deeper they went, the colder it got, not just in air, but in feeling. Like the place itself remembered pain. This is wrong, Sorexa finally said. Her voice was low but sharp. The air smells of blood, fresh blood. Mark didn't answer, but he slowed his steps. That's when the lights died. Not flickered. Died. Gone. A sudden rush of wind blew through the tunnels like a whisper made of knives. Sorexa drew her plasma dagger. Mark didn't move. His ears were listening, hard, and then a scream. Not from her, not from him, but Zathkai. The serpent let out a high-pitched hiss, louder than thunder. Its body twisted, striking into the shadows, but it missed. Something had attacked. Something fast. Mark shouted, "Above!" A dark figure dropped from the ceiling, claws flashing in the faint light. It landed between them, eyes glowing violet. It wasn't a beast, it was a cloaked assassin, and it was aiming for Sorexa. Mark lunged forward without thinking. The assassin slashed with a plasma blade, just missing her throat. Zathkai struck again, this time biting the attacker's arm. But the assassin didn't cry out. It only turned and kicked the serpent against the wall. Sorexa stumbled back, gasping. Her dagger clattered to the stone floor. The assassin raised his blade, aimed straight for her heart. Then a hand grabbed his wrist. Mark twisted the enemy's arm and pulled hard, throwing the assassin to the ground. The human's strength was surprising even to the attacker, but the danger wasn't over. The assassin rolled, raised a hidden blade from his boot, and bang! A single energy pulse rang through the cavern. Mark stood, smoke rising from the small plasma pistol in his hand. The assassin didn't move again. Sorexa stared at him, chest rising and falling fast. You had a weapon?" "Back up," Mark said simply. Zathkai crawled back to Sorexa's feet, bleeding from a long cut along its side. Sorexa dropped to her knees and touched the serpent gently. "You protected me," she whispered. But Zathkai only turned its head. Toward Mark, he was already checking the dead attacker's suit. No badge, no ID, professional. "Someone sent him," Sorexa said. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with rage. "Someone in the academy wanted me dead." Mark stood up. "No, us dead. You were never meant to return from this mission." Sorexa looked up at him. Her eyes weren't cold now. They were uncertain. Searching. "You saved me. Twice now." "I didn't come to watch you die," he replied. "I came to understand you." That night they built a small camp near an underground hot spring. The heat kept the blood sniffing, bugs away. Mark bandaged Zathkai's wound while Sorexa watched silently. Finally she asked, "Why didn't it protect me first?" Mark looked at her. "Because it sensed you would survive, but me? I'm new. I'm vulnerable." Zathkai hissed softly, agreeing. Sorexa smiled for the first time, but it was sad. "I think it no longer sees me as the one who needs saving." Mark looked at her and said gently, "Maybe none of us should have to be saved alone." Far above the deep caverns, in a hidden room of the academy, a cloaked figure watched a glowing screen. It showed a heartbeat. Mark's. A red light blinked next to it. The figure pressed a button and whispered, "Next time, send something worse." The light above the arena turned red. One by one, steel doors groaned open. Sorexa stepped out first, her boots sinking into the cracked stone floor. The air smelled like old bones and burnt metal. She had heard stories about this place. The arena of the wilds, where beasts fought, bled, and died for the galaxy's entertainment centuries ago. Mark stepped out beside her. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. The silence of the arena said enough. Zathkai slithered between them, alert and tense. It sensed danger in every direction. Above them, rows of alien spectators filled the shadows hidden behind glass and metal. The council sat among them, faces unreadable. A booming voice echoed through the arena, old and cold. "Cadet Mark Danner, of Earth. Cadet Sorexa of Vatrax. You have violated tradition. You have formed a bond that should not exist. So today, we test that bond." 6 heavy gates slid open at once. From each one came a creature. Massive, armored and hungry. They weren't just beasts. They were failures, genetic experiments from past wars. Creatures too dangerous to live, but too useful to kill. Mark whispered, "They're sending legends to silence us." Syrexa tightened her grip on her blade. "Let's become bigger ones." The first beast, a two-headed stalker, charged straight at them, roaring with two mouths. Mark rolled to the side, blasting its knee joint with his plasma pistol. The beast staggered. Zathkai leapt, fangs bared, and sank its teeth into the upper neck. The creature shrieked and fell, but there was no time to breathe. A six-legged razor cat pounced next, its tail made of saw blades. It lunged at Syrexa, but Mark got there first, shoving her out of the way. The tail slashed across his shoulder, burning through his uniform. Blood. He grunted but stayed standing. "You're hurt," Syrexa said, stunned. Mark smirked. "Only human, remember?" Together they turned to face the next monster, a silent, floating horror with no face and too many arms. This time, Syrexa led. Her blade glowed, cutting in clean arcs. Mark followed, covering her back. Zathkai danced between them, swift and deadly, striking faster than eyes could track. They fought as one. Up in the council's chamber, the High Seer watched in disbelief. "They're adapting. They're bonding," another elder said bitterly. "The pet listens to both now." "No," the High Seer corrected. "The pet chooses. That human has changed the equation." Back in the arena, the last beast remained. It was the largest. A silent titan of black stone and red eyes with tusks like blades and breath like steam. It didn't roar. It simply walked forward, and the ground shook beneath it. Mark breathed heavily. His left arm was limp. Syrexa had a cut on her leg, dripping blue blood. Zathkai was slower now, its body wounded. They couldn't win by force, so Mark dropped his weapon. "What are you doing?" Syrexa shouted. He stepped forward and whispered something. Low, ancient, soft. The beast stopped, its head tilted. Then, it lowered itself slowly and bowed. Gasps echoed from the crowd. Syrexa watched with wide eyes. "You spoke to it." "I asked it to stop," Mark said softly. "Sometimes that's stronger than a fight." The arena was silent. Then, cheering. From one corner, a young alien cadet stood and clapped, then another. Soon applause rose from the crowd. Not all of them, but enough. In the center of the arena, Mark and Syrexa stood tall. Zathkai coiled between them. They had passed the trial, but they hadn't just survived. They had changed the rules. Later that night, back at the academy, the council met in private. "He used the tongue of the forgotten," one said. "He tamed what couldn't be tamed," said another. "He bonded with the serpent. He survived the beasts. And he earned her trust." The High Seer stood and spoke. "Mark Danner is no longer a student. He is a variable, and variables must be controlled." Syrexa had always believed strength meant control. Control over her thoughts, her enemies, her pet. But now, standing at the edge of the academy courtyard, she watched Zathkai curled around someone else, calm and trusting. Mark. It burned inside her like acid. The arena had changed everything. The crowd had cheered for them. The council had remained silent. And Syrexa had felt something she never expected. Uncertainty. She had shared blood with a human, fought beside him, survived beside him. And somehow, it made her feel weaker. Was it respect? Was it fear? Or was it that her pet, her oldest bond, had begun listening to him more than her? Later that day, she stormed into Mark's quarters unannounced. Zathkai lifted its head, hissed once, then settled again. It didn't strike. That made it worse. "You've changed it," she said sharply. Mark looked up from a data screen. "No, it changed on its own. It was mine, my protector, my only link to home, and now it listens to you like it belongs to you." Mark closed the screen. "Maybe it doesn't belong to anyone," he said. Maybe it chooses who needs it. I needed it, she snapped. You still do? He said calmly. But not to fight for you. To remind you. Of what? That strength doesn't always come from fear. She stared at him, breathing hard. Zathkai slid closer to Mark, resting its head on his knee. That was it. The final sting. Her fingers clenched. Leave, she said. This is my room, Mark replied, confused. Then I'll leave. She turned and walked out without another word. That night, Sorexa didn't return to her quarters. She went to the old arena, now empty. Cold wind blew dust across the floor where they had once fought for survival. She stood in the center and whispered the words of the ancient tongue. The same words Mark had used. Zathkai did not come. Her voice cracked. I raised you, fed you, saved you. I was all you had. But there was only silence. Meanwhile, in a hidden chamber beneath the academy, the council prepared their next move. He weakens her, one elder said. Or strengthens her heart, another replied. We cannot allow this bond to grow, the High Seer said coldly. The serpent is no longer a symbol of Vatrax. It has become a bridge to humanity. That is dangerous. Shall we separate them? No, the seer whispered. We must break them. The next day, Sorexa stood at the central command hall, waiting for her next assignment. Mark joined her, offering a quiet nod. She didn't. Return it. We're not partners anymore, she said coldly. Says who? I say it. He looked hurt, but only for a second. I'm still going on the mission, he said. Whether you come or not. Before she could answer, an emergency alert flashed across the hall. Alert. Creature loose in Quadrant 7. Injuries reported. Warning. Serpent type identified. Her heart dropped. Zathkai. They ran. Down the halls. Past shocked students and security drones toward Quadrant 7. When they arrived, they found Zathkai in the center of the plaza, surrounded by guards. It was growling, wounded, surrounded, and being blamed for the injuries of 2 cadets. Stand. Down, Sorexa shouted, but the guards raised their weapons. Your creature has gone wild, the commander said. Orders are clear. We end it now. Zathkai hissed, but not at the guards. At her. It backed away. Sorexa stepped forward slowly. I didn't mean to push you away. The serpent's body trembled. It looked between her and Mark. Then it did something no one expected. It struck, at Sorexa, but not with its fangs, with its tail. A sharp slap knocked her backward, not to injure, but to warn her. Zathkai was hurting, confused, and angry. Before anyone else could act, Mark stepped between them. He raised one hand and whispered again. Zathkai dropped to the ground, breathing hard, submitting. The guards froze. Sorexa, still, on the ground, looked up, eyes full of tears she didn't let fall. She realized what had truly broken. Not the bond between her and the beast, but the bond between her and the human who had never tried to take it, only to share it. The day of the Unity Assembly arrived. The grand hall of the Galactic Academy, usually cold and full of judgment, now glowed with ceremonial firelight. Students, instructors, and council members filled the vast chamber, gathered not for a test, but for a verdict. At the center, 2 figures stood, Mark Danner, the human who whispered to beasts, and Sorexa, the proud Vatraxian who had once trusted no one. They stood side by side, but the space between them still held silence. Unspoken pain, regret, and something neither had a name for. A large hologram hovered above them, replaying scenes from the arena, the caverns, and the attack in Quadrant 7. The crowd watched. Whispers circled like cold wind. The High Seer stood, robes flowing like smoke. Cadet Mark Danner, he said, you have disrupted balance. You have awakened forces long sealed, and you have bonded with a creature sacred to a culture not your own. Mark stayed calm, and yet The seer continued. You did not claim power, you shared it. He turned to Sorexa. And you, Cadet Sorexa, broke tradition. But perhaps tradition was what needed breaking. A sudden, sharp hiss echoed. Through the hall, all eyes turned to the upper balcony. Zathkai slithered into view. It ignored the guards. It ignored the council. Instead, it slid gracefully down the steps across the polished floor toward the center. The hall fell into complete silence. Mark took a step forward, but then stopped. Zathkai paused. Its eyes moved between them. Sorexa and Mark. Then before the entire assembly, it bowed, not just to Mark, not just to Sorexa, but to both of them, together. A bond rebuilt, not through control, not through power, but through understanding. Gasps rose from the crowd. Some stood, others fell to one knee. Even the seer's voice cracked, slightly. The beast has chosen balance. That night, under the stars of the Academy Sky Garden, Sorexa sat beside Mark once again. No anger, no walls. I thought I was losing everything, she said quietly, but I was just afraid of sharing. Mark smiled gently. Sharing didn't make you weaker, it made us stronger. Zathkai rested between them, breathing peacefully. Sorexa placed her hand on Mark's. This time she didn't pull away. Across the galaxy, stories began to spread, of the human who tamed a venomous beast, of the warrior who let go of pride, of the bond that rewrote the laws of power, and of the day a creature born for war bowed in peace. Together, Mark and Sorexa became a legend, not because they conquered, but because they united.